Sarah, you're here to speak at .js, right?
Yeah.
So how long have you been talking in conferences?
I think my first conference was in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah,
almost six years ago.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of conferences until last year, though. Yeah, last year. Last year was insane. Like, I didn't do a lot, and then I started being a developer advocate, and then last year I did like 50 conferences.
What?
It's 50 conferences and meetups. Like,
in a year?
Yes.
No
That's
way.
why I had a mental breakdown in Frankfurt.
In different countries?
No, in Frankfurt Airport.
No, I mean the conferences, number of conferences.
I mean, I lived in Portugal, so yes.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's why I had a mental breakdown in Frankfurt. I think one of the major issues that I had was that I lived in Porto, which doesn't fly anywhere except London and Paris.
So you had always to go through another country.
I know where things are in the Amsterdam airport, which is honestly kind of insane. I don't even need to look at the map anymore almost. I can just figure it out. Which people are just like, I keep getting lost in the airport. I'm like, it's right there. And it's like a 15-minute walk. And I'm like, I know exactly where this is.
At least you have that as a job. If ever you don't have anything to do, you can be at the airport and you get people.
I became like weirdly obsessed with airports. Like, it's actually kind of insane. I became like really weirdly obsessed with airports. Not airplanes, but just airports. It became like a real weird obsession for me. And then I moved to Berlin where they're both terrible for some reason.
I like your story about airports. But so when did you start so you told what did you start with? Why did you start conferences? How was it?
At the time I was, I think 21 or something like that. And I was what do you say, the people that bring coffee? I was an intern.
People that bring food.
I was like an unpaid intern at a company, but to make money when I was...
Intern, you said?
Yeah, I was an intern, yeah. Bringing them coffees. So I was an intern at a WordPress company at the time. And basically what happened was I did a lot of articles because I needed money to pay for gas because it was an unpaid internship. So that got the attention of people at Front Trends. And they were like, you want to come to Poland? And I swear to God, for like 30 minutes, I thought they were trying to kidnap me. And it wasn't actually to go to a conference because I was very confused by the whole situation. I was 21.
Okay.
Like, I didn't get money for work, but they wanted to pay for me to go to Poland. Exactly. So, and
I've been in Poland actually for a conference, but I don't remember the name of the conference. But it was a very good organization of a conference.
All of the conferences that I've been in Poland have been all of the conferences that I've been in Eastern Europe have been very well organized. They all pick you up from the airport as well.
Yeah, and a good service, and they pay a very good hotel
and very well organized in general. Like even food and organization, they're usually on time. It's very peculiar actually. It's a very interesting thing. So I've never actually, before I've been to, the first flight that I've ever been into was for that conference because you don't need to fly in Portugal. Like, you just drive everywhere. It's very tiny. Like, it takes 6 hours to get from one end of the country to the other. Like, it's fine. So it was an experience, let's just say the least. And I remember that I finished my talk at 2 a.m. the day before in a hotel lobby.
Well, that's early. You learned that this is
and then I learned that that's normal, yeah. I think speaking is interesting because, first of all, you meet a lot of people, and I think that's actually where you gain more out of speaking. I made a lot of friends while speaking, and you also you learn to figure things out. You learn to be in a new city and just figure things out because you need to figure out how to get somewhere, and you're not home, and you don't know where things are, and you learn to do things by yourself. You become way more independent because you have to do all these things by yourself.
Probably, yeah. That probably happened to me. But maybe the major thing when I started doing conferences was time. I couldn't manage time. It was very, very because you lose every other routine that you had in your life that structured your day. So you wake up and then time becomes it's
a human construct.
I don't know. You have all what you care about is when your talk is. And everything before that doesn't exist. Time doesn't exist before that.
There's also the thing of when you start traveling a lot, you don't know what food time is. Food time is whenever the fuck you're hungry. Sleep time is whenever the fuck you're sleepy. There's no more time zones. That's not a thing anymore. You have a burger at 10 a.m. because you've been flying for 4 hours and you're starving. And you start a bit of removing those like ideas that you had from your country a bit. For example, like in Portugal, food time is at 1 and 7:30 or 8. And then I was like, no, food time is now because I'm hungry. Like,
Food time for me was like exactly after my talk. I couldn't eat before.
oh, actually, it doesn't bother me. My stomach is like my
you're
stomach
good.
doesn't care.
You're lucky.
Honestly, like I was in Mexico for like 2 weeks and a half, and I was fine. Like, I was completely fine. I was loving it.
Okay, but that's at least that. So what was the first subject you talked about?
It was CSS. I was talking
CSS.
about things like supports in CSS. There's a rule called supports in CSS, which tests if the browser supports something. And I was talking about a lot of like the new stuff in CSS. So I started with CSS, and then
They didn't kidnap you. That was in Poland.
No, because it
Right.
was Poland. It wasn't like a really weird country. And also, I think the funniest thing that I had about this conference was that there was a direct flight from Porto to Warsaw, but I never been on a plane, so I didn't know if I was gonna fucking hate it. So what I did was that I booked a flight from Porto to Lisbon, which was an hour, and then I had a 9-hour layover. Because I thought, this was my thinking, it was like, if I hate the plane, I can just take a train back. I mean, it was good thinking at least. I was smart. I was not smart. And that's also when I found out they never turn off the lights in an airport. They never go off. It's very sad.
You had to sleep in the airport.
Yeah, it was 9 hours during the night. I arrived at 11 p.m. and my flight was at 9 a.m.
And it's cold, of course. An
It's
airport.
Portugal. It's never cold.
Ah, okay.
We don't know what
At least
cold
that.
is. I didn't know what cold was until I moved to Berlin. I thought 10
So you-
degrees
So
was
you
cold.
spent time here in Berlin.
Yeah, I
That's
thought 10
cold.
degrees was cold. So, point. I have no idea what I was saying.
Well, let's move to when you started your first talk, right?
Yeah.
And you went on stage, right?
It's terrifying.
And you have people in front of you. What happened?
I think a good thing that I have is that I mask nervousness with humor. So it works very well for these types of things. But it's terrifying. And the thing is, no matter how long you've been speaking, it's still terrifying. It's still terrifying to have people like stare at you and hope that you're smart.
The first 5 minutes are a bit the hardest, maybe the first 5
Yeah.
minutes.
It's also harder if the people don't laugh.
Yeah, if they're not interacting. Like often I remember like in the first, like when I start my talk and then either you see like someone will just stand up and go like whoa, now everyone is leaving, like maybe I said something wrong, maybe I should change something about what I'm saying, and then you see someone looking at their phone, you say like, okay, I lost him, I lost one, now I don't know how many are
And it's
still with
always
me.
the person that you use as your marker.
That will
And they're like, it's the marker, and then they're like, I'm just gonna play Candy Crush. I'm like, no, man.
and you start like being excited and trying to convince that person where maybe everyone was actually with you.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very hard because you're very focused on what you're doing, and then you just pick one or two people and you stare at them, and you can either get very lucky and get people that are actually engaged, or you can get very unlucky. And it doesn't mean that not everyone is engaged. It means that those two people that you looked at, they're not very engaged in the thing. Like, there's a lot of like variables that you need to see. Like sometimes you do a React talk and it's a person that doesn't even do React. Sometimes you do a CSS talk for someone who doesn't even do CSS. But it's terrifying. Like, I still think to this day it's terrifying. Like, I am terrified, like, to speak at .js. Like, I am, like, shit
No
scared.
way.
I am terrified.
Like
I've been
100
terrified for, like, a
later.
week. Like, my legs hurt from, like, being nervous. Like, this is insane.
But that will go after the first 5 minutes, I think, and then you will get into it, right?
I hope so. I hope so. I
Let's
think
hope
it's
so.
because I have this really high idea of this conference because it was the first conference that I've ever been as an attendee. And it was really good.
Yeah.
So, like, I accepted it, and I was like, what the fuck have I done with my life? And now I'm just like, I'm gonna die in Paris. Well, at least I die in Paris.
Yeah, at least that. There's once that I did a talk, and the guy before me, he was a computer scientist who did, like, great things about functional programming, and I was thinking, like, whoa, like, probably the same audiences, and I will be talking to them, and maybe that will be very disappointing. And like you get into thinking like, oh, am I going to be as good as the first one?
One time
Or-
I spoke after Sarah Trasner.
This is the second time you mentioned her.
One time I
Fine,
spoke
you're-
after
you're
Sarah
good.
Trasner. And it was like, this was in the beginning. I didn't even know her. I was like, oh my God. It's also like, you need to get very lucky at where you get placed. I think my country has the best example for this. So we have a hard music festival, a hard rock music festival, which had Metallica playing at like the last time. So like the headliner. And before that was Nickelback. So if you get placed before Metallica in a hard rock festival and you're Nickelback, it's not going to be good for you. So like what happened was they got booed off the stage and people throw like tomatoes and shit at Nickelback and they never come back to Portugal. Oh no. Terrible.
That's a good example.
Honestly, it's the best thing my country ever did, except Ronaldo. And the drug thing, which was very good. The non-sending drug users to jail. That was also good. But that's the thing. If they had their own show, there would probably be a lot of people who like Nickelback that would go to their show. If it was a normal festival that didn't have like Metallica playing afterwards, there would be no problem.
Yeah.
But it also depends a lot on where you get placed. Like if you get placed like what happened to you, you're just like God. Or if you have a really technical talk and you get placed after a designer, it's the same thing.
Yeah, also like it's not relevant to the topic. Is probably
and you usually don't control these things. That's the problem. I had a friend of mine who had an introduction to something. So he had an introduction to testing. I don't even remember what the introduction was, but he was placed after a talk that was a deep dive into the thing that he was introducing. And you're just like, gotta. So like, it all is a bit of luck, but I think if you know how to like control the amount of conferences that you do, it is worth it. But I do advise you to try and keep a number of things because you will get excited because people will give you free stuff. I think this happens a lot if you either come from countries that don't travel a lot or you've been like not poor, but you've never had money to travel.
Yeah, we'll be able to travel.
You're not able to travel as a kid, and then all of a sudden people are like, do you want to come here for free? And you're like, yeah, sure. Why would I say no? And then you get very excited, and then you have a mental breakdown in Frankfurt. And Frankfurt is a very depressing city to have a mental breakdown. Like, if you're going to do it in Amsterdam. like, not in Frankfurt. Like, it's very depressing. So I think that as long as you can control these things, you're going to meet amazing people, and you're going to realize they're all idiots like you, and it's beautiful.
But now, like, what kind of tricks you do when you are, like, in an awkward position while you're talking? Like, do you use jokes? How do you interact with people when you feel like, okay, there's no interaction happening, people are sleeping? Do you have anything, like, any advices for people to do?
I would say that usually, like, moving a bit usually helps. Because people get attracted to movement, so if you move a bit, that it usually helps. No, I mean like moving into place. I know. The main issue is when the mic is set like this, for example, and you can't move.
Yeah.
But if you have a walking mic, I would say move a bit because that will actually call the attention of people. And also have some jokes prepared.
But for the moving part, also it's good because it removes the stress. Once you start moving, that stress in the muscle, it goes away.
Yeah.
But sometimes in some conferences they tell you like, okay, but for the camera it's only this zone, and then you can't move anymore. And that's a bit
That's
tricky.
a problem. Yeah. Also because I tend to move a lot. I would say that if you're starting out, you use speaker notes. Even if you're not starting out, I don't use them. But I memorize things. It's easier for me. But if you're starting out, use speaker notes because even if you get lost, you have what you're supposed to say there.
Mm-hmm.
And
at least a starting point. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think save some jokes. Always have some jokes in your speaker notes or in, like, something open in your computer so that you can, like, say something. Or make jokes about things that everyone hates. Either will that be the post office, airports, like, Ryanair. Just say that something is terrible. Because the thing is, people get united by hate. It's very weird, but it's way easier for people to bond over the same thing that they hate than to bond over the same thing that they like. So if you just make fun of Nickelback or you make fun of like Ryanair, like the Beauvais airport, some weird thing like that, people will laugh because they get like...
They suffer from this.
Because they suffer from that, exactly. Don't make yourself look too smart because that will make people not associate with you as in like a human level.
And they will have a lot of expectations afterwards.
They will have a lot of expectations and people will not like really connect with you.
Yeah, that's a very important thing.
Yeah, so just be yourself. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. But honestly, the best thing that I have to say is that...
You try to overplay often when you're in a talk in the beginning. Like, try to overplay yourself and it's like trying to look good. But it's better that... people, not you.
Yeah.
But it's better, like, if you're being yourself, people will will see you as a normal human being. Whereas when you're trying to overplay, then people can recognize that and see like
Yeah.
it's artificial, it's not good. You know, it
Yeah,
brings a lot
it's also so there's a thing of like I've had someone tell me, and I just told this to a friend of mine as well, is like always have an introduction slide about yourself, but don't overdo it. Like don't say everything that you've ever done, because first of all, most people don't care. And I think the most important thing is that I usually have a slide of like, my name is Sarah, I'm from Berlin, and I work at Code Sandbox. And that's the max. I usually don't even say that I'm from Berlin. For example, in the slide that I have for this talk is the last slide.
Last slide is good to talk about yourself in the last slide.
So I say, thank you. By the way, my name is Sarah, and I'm this on Twitter. And the only thing that I say about myself in the entire talk, besides that, is that I work at Code Sandbox, for example.
Which is important for the context.
Yeah, it's important for the context of the talk. It's usually not that. So, like, don't try to overplay yourself, but also introduce yourself. Because having a human side is always better. It's one of those things that, you know that you're 60 or 70% more likely to give a wallet back if it has a photo. For example. Like, it's that kind of thing, like, to connect with the audience in any way. Like, try to make jokes according to the country. Like, don't make baseball jokes in France. Like, that doesn't work. Like, don't do it, because we don't watch baseball in Europe. Like, it's not really a thing. Like, switch your jokes to football or something. Like, try to personalize a bit of things about where you're going. It doesn't even have to be the exact country, but the area. It's kind of like that US, like, Europe thing. Like, US doesn't watch football, we don't watch their football.
Right.
So, like, try to do a bit of research to where you're going, because sometimes it's important. Because sometimes, for example, those guys that did the Fox song, they're from a country that, what does the Fox say? They're from a country...
I don't know anything about that, so I will
What?
let you, I will
Really?
let you say, yeah.
You don't know the What Does the Fox Say song on YouTube?
No.
That was like a weird hit.
Probably.
It was these guys from a Scandinavian country that just kept saying, "What does the fox say?"
Okay.
Do you not remember this? Really?
It's a song. It's an actual song.
Yeah, it's an
I
actual
know
thing.
it. Okay. No,
Okay,
no,
yeah.
okay.
So those guys-
I heard this song before knowing English, and I didn't know that these are the actual vocabulary, the actual lyrics of the.
Oh, that makes sense.
It was nothing for me. It was like just music.
That makes
and
sense.
sounds,
That makes sense. Like Ozone
Now
back in the day, where they sing like Romania or Macedonia or something,
Whatever,
and you're just like, it's
yeah,
just
whatever
gibberish
it
to
is.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Now I just realized that is
Yeah.
what it says. Okay, thank you.
So
Thank you for singing it with the music. I made me realize.
Okay. Those guys are from, I don't remember which country, but they're from a Scandinavian country. And you think that their humor is completely ridiculous, but that's the type of humor they like there. So they like you to be completely ridiculous. And there are countries which like dark humor. So, like, try to do a bit of research so you don't really, like, make a joke that really, like... And there's just countries that just don't laugh.
Oh, there. Which countries? You have to say.
I had a bunch of problems in Ukraine and in Poland sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Germans, do they laugh?
sometimes.
Sometimes.
So the thing is, most of the...
French people don't laugh easily either.
No, they don't. But most of the problems that I had in... so most of the conferences that I had in Germany were actually in Berlin, which is 30% non-German, so it doesn't
That's why it
really
doesn't
count,
count,
so
yeah.
I don't know.
And also, I find something that you try when you are doing your first talks is that you try to over-deliver. So basically, you try either to speak too fast, too quickly, so that you think that you're delivering more value by speaking quickly. And I found the best talks are where people like really deliver few content, but that they're sure they're delivering that content. What do you think?
I have a problem actually with speaking very slowly. So which, if I get excited, I start speaking super fast and super loud. So this is something that I'm still working on, because I honestly also think that it's better if you... I prefer usually like kind of philosophical talks that actually go into code. So like talks about the idea of fixing something, and that's talks that are delivered super smoothly. So that's something that I'm actually also working on, because I do think that it's a better way to approach something is to show the picture and then paint it with the colors that you want to paint it.
Right.
And that involves also always, I think it's very important that if you can put a story to the talk that you're giving, to why this is important to you, why you were drawn into this, like what pain did you have to start digging really deep into routing, for example? Because it doesn't matter how specific it is, like there's a reason you got into it. And if people know that, they will connect with you more.
Right, and it gives the context, but also it becomes not so dense in its content, because you have like some space where you're talking about the content and it's easy to follow, and then at some point you dig into the code, but people had the chance to dig with you. Whereas if you start right away with the code, people maybe will get like it will be hard to follow.
Yeah.
Another thing that I noticed when starting to talking at conferences is leave space for questions. Sometimes you really want to deliver the content that you don't give the last 5 or 10 minutes to actually get the questions.
So I actually prefer to not have Q&A and talk to people after.
You can do that.
So it's not because of the time, because I usually run under time, like not at Touch Yes because it's 18 minutes, but if I have 45 minutes, it's usually like
Wait, there's something. Did you ever like have this kind of anxiety that maybe your talk will... You're not sure how long your talk will be? Like
I never know how long my talks will be.
Yeah.
Which is like, I just guess it's between 20 and 25 or something like that.
But like I've been like sometimes on stage and like, what if I finish the talk like 10 minutes before? What will happen? How can I fill 10 minutes afterwards?
Yeah, and then you get to the end and you're just saying bullshit because you don't know what to say. Because you're like,
I wouldn't do that.
So I still have 3 minutes. No idea what to say in just 3 minutes though. So we're just gonna keep it. Just go get coffee.
So you were saying like you rather talk afterwards with people.
Yeah, I usually rather have questions afterwards, because the thing is, most people who have really interesting questions will ask them in person.
Yeah, they will not actually ask them in public.
Yeah, so like
to do that.
as I prefer to ask questions in person. Also, like as a woman in tech, you usually get like a lot more questions of people being like, I'm going to tell you what's the best way of doing this. And you also get a lot of things where like, this is not a question, just a comment or something like that. And I'm just like, you're just trying to get attention. Like this happens to men as well. Like it's not particularly a woman thing, which I do think it happens a lot more to women as well. But
probably.
Yeah, it doesn't happen to me that much. But usually there's always, like I did a GraphQL talk and there was a guy who raised his hand and he was like, but I hate GraphQL. And I'm like, that's cool. What do you want me to do? Like...
I can only imagine the face of that person.
Like, that's cool, I guess. Cool. Like, no, why are you telling me this? Like, why are you like, you could have just told me at the end and be like, I hate GraphQL. How do you handle these things the thing that I hate? Like, I feel like to a point, a lot of people that ask these questions are trying to look good for some reason. And I'm like, why are you doing this? You want to just come to the stage? Like, is that what you want? Do you want to switch this? Because this is terrible for me, too. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't know why I accepted this. So I always try to talk to people after. Also because you can be more of yourself. Like, you're not trapped into a stage where thousands of people are looking at you. You can actually talk like a normal human being to that person.
Also, several people can contribute into that discussion.
Yeah, there's also more people, and you can talk like a normal human being. And that person is also like, that person actually interacts and asks questions back, instead of just being one question into the void that you answer and it's done. Mm-hmm. I feel like Q&As should be like more personal. Like the last conference that I went in Poland had like a speaker corner. So basically when you finished your talk, you would go there for like 10 minutes. And I do think that was actually nice because people went there, instead of being in front of everyone, they could just ask any questions they wanted. And even if they saw you afterwards or something, they could still ask. But it was actually quite a nice idea, because it's not in the actual stage. It's like outside. So you just sit there, and if someone wants to ask you something, they do.
They can ask you.
Yeah, it's a really nice idea.
Cool. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.